Reflecting on my past, it's surprising to think about the unexpected turns my life has taken. The dreams I had as a young person were vivid and full of hope. I grew up in a small town with a supportive family that valued trust and loyalty. My father, a firm but fair man, was a firefighter who taught me the importance of protecting those I loved. My mother, the heart of our home, was always there with wise words and encouragement. From an early age, I understood that love wasn't just a feeling but a commitment formed over time and through challenges. School was where I first met Emma. She was captivating, with her contagious laugh and the way she moved as if the world was her stage. We were opposites in many ways. She sought attention and excitement while I valued stability and simplicity. Yet there was an undeniable pull between us. We navigated the turbulent waves of teenage love with its highs and inevitable breakups. Those separations were painful, but we always found our way back to each other, our bond seemingly unbreakable. After high school, life accelerated. I joined the fire department, following in my father's footsteps, embracing the adrenaline and camaraderie that came with a job constantly reminding me of life's fragility. Emma, driven and determined, pursued her nursing career. I admired her resolve, even though it sometimes created distance between us. The night of my injury, a fire that almost cost me more than my career, brought us closer again, as if fate had conspired to reunite us. Within months, we were married, believing we had overcome every obstacle thrown our way. It started with something that seemed insignificant on an ordinary Friday afternoon. My 6-year-old daughter, Evie, an energetic first grader, got a ride home from school with her friend's mother. As they passed through our neighborhood, I received a quick call asking if I could meet her. I agreed without a second thought. Instead of slowing down, the mother briefly parked at the curb, and Evie jumped out, crossing to our driveway as she'd been taught. Excited to see me, she stepped out from behind the car and into the path of an approaching vehicle. Time froze as I rushed to call for help. Minutes later, sirens filled the air, signaling the arrival of the ambulance and police. My wife of 7 years was on her regular shift at the nursing home. Since the rules there required cell phones to be stored in designated lockers, I called the facility on my way to the hospital to find out if they could relay the situation to her. That's when I learned that due to an unexpected slowdown at the home, full-time staff were asked to use some of their accumulated time off to avoid layoffs. My wife had decided to use her time off that day. What seemed odd was that she left for work in her uniform that morning. It didn't make sense. Normally, she would tell me if she planned to take the day off. I wondered if she had taken on private work to help someone. The receptionist's vague response only added to my doubts. It was a minor detail, but it stuck with me. I called her cell, but it went to voicemail. It felt off because she usually answered when she wasn't working. Something was wrong, but I didn't know what. I left a message explaining everything that had happened. I had gathered the necessary paperwork for my daughter, but still hadn't heard from Emma. The ER doctor ordered X-rays and an MRI for Evie, concerned she might have slipped into a coma as she hadn't regained consciousness. My worry grew. Finally, about an hour after she would typically finish work, my wife arrived. When I hugged her, I noticed the fresh scent of soap, like she had just showered. It raised more questions, but I couldn't pinpoint why. It was another small detail that nagged at me. I asked, "Emma, did the receptionist give you my message?" She replied, "I was busy with a patient being transferred to St. Francis, and you were here in the Southeast." I knew she was lying, but chose not to confront her then. It wasn't the right time. 2 people had lied to me that day, and I needed to find out why. What had started as a typical day now involved unanswered questions and details that didn't add up. The only certainty was that my wife wasn't acting like herself. As the tests finished, Evie started to wake up, and I felt grateful to be by her side. The doctors decided to keep her overnight for observation due to the length of time she had been unconscious. Around 10 p.m., when she fell asleep, we went home, stopping for food at Taco Bell on the way. After eating and a cold beer, we went to bed. On Saturday, we were relieved to take our little girl home, thankful she hadn't suffered serious injuries. At the hospital, our family doctor, Dr. Ronald Foster, had already examined her. I was impressed by his dedication. Before leaving, he advised us to call his office to schedule a follow-up in 3 weeks, explaining that issues from the accident could appear later without proper monitoring. He stressed that it's best to be cautious with children so young. When we got home and settled in, I asked Emma again how her Friday went. Her answer didn't sit right with me. Normally, she would share funny stories or talk about new transfers from the hospital. But this time, those small pieces of our usual conversation were missing. It was just little things. But now, those little things were forming a pattern. Whatever Emma had done on Friday, it was clear she didn't want me to know. I started to wonder why. I looked back over the past few weeks to see if I had done something to upset her. Emma could hold a grudge for weeks if she felt she'd been wronged. We had been sweethearts since middle school. From the moment I met her in junior high, she was the only one for me. Though we broke up 3 or 4 times, we always ended up back together. Emma had a bad habit. When something caught her interest, she'd chase it down to find out what it was. At those times, we'd break up. I thought it was just part of growing up and assumed she would grow out of it. Each breakup happened because she was curious about someone or something else. I was on the Jackson High School soccer team, and she was a cheerleader. We were both popular, and everyone expected us to be together. But during our senior year, we broke up because I realized we weren't going anywhere. After high school, I joined the fire department and worked my way up. She earned her LPN certification and started training to become a registered nurse. We reconnected when I got injured fighting a fire. 6 months later, we were married, and by the time Emma became a registered nurse, our daughter was 2. Emma had shoulder-length black hair, blue eyes, and an attractive figure. She was known for bringing joy to those around her. What puzzled me was that we never had major issues during our marriage. Just a few months ago, we'd even considered growing our family. On Sunday, we were invited to a barbecue by one of her co-workers, an outdoor party by the pool. We wore bathing suits under our clothes and brought food. On the way, I stopped at the grocery store to get the items we needed. We brought enough premium smoked franks and buns for 16 people. I had a habit of boiling them before grilling. The natural casing kept them moist and smoky, making them a favorite. It was an accidental discovery, but now I only cooked them this way, and they were always a hit. That Sunday, unnoticed by anyone, I stood in the kitchen cooking the franks in salted water. I watched as they puffed up, then drained and dried them before placing them on the grill. Emma was at the patio door, engaged in conversation with Oliva, the head of HR at their workplace. Both of them were watching the pool where our daughter and other children were playing. I wasn't paying attention to their discussion until the end, and what I overheard left me stunned. Their conversation revealed everything. Dr. Ronald Foster, that popular single doctor, used to come in every Friday afternoon to check on patients, Oliva said. Now he only comes on Fridays when you're there. It's making people talk. Is there more going on that I need to know about? She pressed. Emma, looking flustered, hesitated. That expression said she had been caught in something she didn't want to explain. Suddenly, it all made sense. 2 people's routines had shifted, and Emma had her reasons for keeping it hidden, something that wasn't typical for her. We're just professional colleagues, Emma said, attempting to sound convincing. He values the detailed reports I send about his Alzheimer's patient. It helps with their care. That's not what people are saying in the halls, Oliva replied bluntly. Whatever is happening between you two, keep it out of sight at work, or the rumors will only spread. Emma's voice dropped. I'll let him know the next time I see him. I have another doctor's appointment next week. She glanced toward the pool. I should check on Evie. I watched as Emma walked toward our daughter by the pool. Without meaning to, I muttered, Son of a witch, she's lying. She doesn't have a doctor's appointment next week. Oliva turned at the sound of my voice, her eyes locking with mine. The shock on my face must have mirrored her own. She went pale, realizing, as I did, that something serious was unfolding, and I was only now learning of it. You heard us, Damon, didn't you? Oliva asked quietly. I nodded. You think something's going on, don't you? There have been small clues lately that didn't make sense, but hearing this just now, it's painting an entirely different picture, she said. Her expression showed she was hiding something she didn't want anyone to uncover, which made me rethink everything. Can you tell me how long Emma has been taking every other Friday off? I asked. For the past 3 months. She proposed the idea herself because she works so many extra hours. She said most of her overtime goes to taxes, so taking a day off helps cut down on extra hours and gives her a regular day for family matters, Oliva explained. From HR's perspective, it's beneficial because it saves the company money and gives part-timers more work. One more question. How close are Emma and the receptionist who answers the phone? They're best friends. Why? Oliva replied. Because of Evie's accident on Friday? The receptionist told me Emma was taking cumulative permanent time off due to work being slow, with management moving staff to part-time to avoid layoffs, I said. You were lied to, we're at full capacity, and don't have room to spare, Oliva said. What are you planning to do? She added, pouring me a strong drink. Emma is definitely hiding something, and her best friend seems to be helping her. It's likely been going on for a while now. I really hope my current suspicions are wrong, I said. Dr. Foster is our family doctor. If my gut feeling is right, I'll ruin his career, divorce his wife, and get full custody of our daughter. From the talk around, you're not the only one who suspects something more is happening, Oliva said. The nurses she works with think they're too close for it to just be professional. They spend too much time in the patient's room when the unit door is closed. If I learn anything else, I'll let you know. Please do. As a firefighter, we say, where there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe it's just a mutual attraction taken too far. Either way, I'm going to find out, I said, trying to clear the fog of doubt clouding my thoughts. Nice try, but I doubt it'll work, Oliva said. I've been there, and when our instincts tell us something, they're usually right. I started to believe I was seeing the same behavior in Emma that I'd noticed back in high school. If that was true, it could only mean one thing. Emma's interest had shifted to someone else. Dr. Ronald Foster had joined the partnership group a little over 3 years ago, taking over from our former family doctor. The local hospital had pushed him out due to his age, and his group partners essentially forced him into retirement. Emma, now a registered nurse, had earned her license while working at Southeast Hospital before transferring to a nursing home. Southeast, being a teaching hospital, wanted a younger image, and when our former doctor wouldn't change his appearance to fit that image, it was time for him to go. It's unfortunate when medical institutions prioritize image over experience and knowledge. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked an evening shift from 6 to 6, 4 days on and 4 days off. This schedule gave them the perfect opportunity to do as they pleased without fear of being caught. Emma's behavior had created enough doubt that I took a step I never thought I'd need to. Before grilling the smoked meats, I sent a text to one of my team members, asking him to call me in 5 minutes. I stood by my wife when the call came through. Before answering, I told her, "It's work-related, so I'm going outside for a moment," I answered and asked him to wait, stepping out of the yard. In truth, I didn't want Emma overhearing this conversation. "Bob, remember the team we put together for Glenn when we helped him find out what was happening with his ex-wife a couple of years ago?" I asked. "Of course, Damon, it worked well and didn't take long," Bob replied. "Who needs our help now?" "I believe this has been going on for at least 3 months. Emma and Dr. Ronald Foster are involved," I said. "Even her colleagues suspect something. I know because I overheard her supervisor questioning her about it. Whatever is happening must be serious to be talked about openly. HR even told Emma to tone it down when they're at work. If it's reached that point, it's been going on for a while. I'll start making calls and see if we can meet at the fire station tomorrow during our shift," Bob said. "The sheriff's department might find this interesting. Remember, Damon, we need to follow the same rules as we did for Glenn. When we created that plan, we agreed he wouldn't interfere until we were done. Any changes in his behavior could tip off his spouse and cause her to change her actions. We finished our work in less than a month and provided him with all the detailed information about his ex-wife and her lover. The lawyer said the report was so thorough, nothing could have slipped through. Glenn won the divorce and gained primary custody of their 3 children. We met on Monday night after dinner in the firehouse meeting room. Present were 6 members of the sheriff's department, 5 firefighters, and 2 police officers. I recounted everything that had happened on Friday and what I had discovered since. Everyone agreed something serious was going on. I gave them a description of my wife's car, her license plate number, and her typical work hours, which were from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. They asked me to gather copies of our medical records from the past 2 years from the file cabinet at home. They needed to confirm that Dr. Ronald Foster was still listed as our family doctor by checking the medical billing records. If there was a romantic involvement between them, he would need to transfer us to another doctor in the practice. I was then asked to leave the room so they could organize the details of who would handle what and when. On Tuesday morning, after I walked my daughter to the bus, I saw my retired neighbor picking up his morning paper. I went over to greet him. While we were talking, he asked, "Why did the doctor visit last night?" "Are you sure it was a doctor?" I asked. "He was still wearing his white coat when he got out of the car. I saw him take it off and leave it in the car. Your wife had already opened the front door and was waiting for him. He was still there when I went to bed around 10 o'clock, he said. "I hope everything's okay." "I don't know why he was there, but I'll ask my wife when she gets home," I replied. As I walked back to the house, I knew my fears were being confirmed. I showed my neighbor a picture of Dr. Ronald Foster from the medical group's Facebook page on my phone. He nodded. That's the same doctor. Emma called later to say she'd be home late, so I took Evie to my mother's house to make it to work on time. I told Bob what my neighbor had said and handed him copies of our medical records and insurance information. These show that Dr. Ronald Foster is still our family doctor. The last time Emma saw him was 2 weeks ago, I said. The following Tuesday, while Emma was at work, some men came to do some work around the house. I wasn't allowed inside while they were working, so I sat and talked with my neighbor. That doctor's visit last week wasn't for medical reasons, was it? He asked. You're sharp, I told him. He said, Your friends are wiring the house? They are, I said. But they're doing it without telling me where everything is. If I knew what they were doing, I'd be watching. Any change in my behavior might have tipped them off. I wish I had friends like yours, he said. When I went through my divorce years ago, it would have saved me thousands in legal fees. Nowadays, you have to protect yourself from everyone, even those you trust. On the first day of my last 4-night shift, which marked the end of my 6-week night schedule, they came to the firehouse with some bad news. They even brought one of the town's top divorce attorneys. I knew immediately it was worse than I had imagined. Emma and Dr. Ronald Foster were involved in an affair that had been ongoing for over 6 months. It was now at a critical point. Emma planned to wait until the end of the school year, only 2 months away, to file for divorce. During my night shifts, they would either stay at my house after Evie went to bed, or Emma would drop Evie off at her sister's house so she could stay the night at Ronald's. Emma would pick up Evie in the morning before I returned home and continue as if nothing happened. The lawyer's presence was because of the lengths they were going behind my back. Emma, with Ronald's help, planned to accuse me of mental cruelty to prove I was an unfit father and a danger to Evie. She thought that with her professional credibility and falsified medical records, the court would grant her sole custody and limit my contact to supervised visits. Her ultimate aim was to push me and my parents to the point where we would leave their lives for good. As I listened, I wondered what I could have done to make Emma so vengeful. The 60-page report had dates, pictures, including incriminating ones of them together, and several notarized statements confirming the affair had lasted at least 6 months. There were also transcripts of conversations detailing their plans to ruin me. I decided that Emma would be served papers after my last night shift that week. We'll also file a complaint with the state medical board against Dr. Ronald Foster, I told the lawyer. Attach the evidence showing he was still our family doctor based on the billing records. We need to question whether, as a couple plotting this together, he could have falsified my wife's medical information or my records to support her claims of mental cruelty, I added. A copy of the divorce petition would be sent to the local child services office, explaining that I was taking my daughter out of town so they could investigate both me and my wife without any interference. The letter stated that this was a precautionary measure. I planned to take a 3-week vacation as soon as my current work shift ended. The vacation had already been approved, and they advised me to take Evie out of town. One of the department heads in our firefighting crew was present as I called my retired parents. Dad, I need a huge favor, I said. Can I borrow your van and take a 3-week vacation with Evie? He paused. What's going on, son? I'll explain everything when we're on the road, I said. My newly hired attorney was surprised when I suggested signing over temporary parental rights to my parents until the divorce was finalized. It's a smart move given this situation, he said. If Emma has already filed a complaint with child services, this will show that you're prioritizing your daughter's well-being. It demonstrates to everyone involved, even legally, that you're protecting your child. I'll prepare the documents, he added. Make sure they're notarized within 24 hours after we serve your wife. The day I finished my last evening shift, I came home just in time to see Emma leave for work. She kissed me on the cheek as usual and left. Once she was out of the driveway, I made a quick phone call. Evie, I said, we need to start packing for a trip. One of the sheriff's department representatives notified the school principal about the situation and why I needed to pick up our 6-year-old daughter. By 8 a.m., my parents arrived, and we loaded up the van. By 9, we were on the road. Out of courtesy, I called Oliva. I wanted to let you know what's happening, I said. Thank you for telling me, Damon, she said. While they were at the nursing home, everything seemed professional. I understand, I replied, but I have proof that their affair has been going on for at least 6 months. I'll be serving her papers tonight while she's at work. I'll be a witness and keep you informed, Oliva said. I joined Evie in the van and handed my mother an envelope with all the details. "Mom, please read this," I said. "What's happening?" my dad asked. "I just found out that Emma was planning to file for divorce at the end of the school year," I explained. "What Mom is reading is what we've been able to prove. Her lover is our family doctor, and they were plotting to make sure I'd never see Evie again by the time it went to court." My dad's expression turned serious. "We need to get you and Evie out of here. This is going to be tough for some people." "Emma is being served at work today," I said. "The medical board has already received a formal complaint." "Oh my God," my mother gasped. "Did they let my granddaughter witness any of this? That woman will regret it." "She will," my dad said firmly. "They've ruined themselves." "They're both foolish," my mom added. "Damon, you and Evie will stay with us when you return. If Emma comes by when you and your dad aren't home, I'll be the one answering the door with a loaded rifle. No more school bus. I'll drive Evie to school and pick her up every day." I smiled. I loved my mom. She adored her only granddaughter more than anything, and was fiercely protective of her family. My dad drove until we needed gas, stopping when the tank was half empty. I paid with my credit card and took over driving, giving him a chance to read the documents. He was stunned by the detailed report. I explained to him about the group we had formed in city services. "This is the second time we've worked to protect one of our own through a divorce," I said. Around 3 p.m., we arrived at the trailer park my mom had reserved for our stay. These 3 weeks were meant for her to spoil her granddaughter. After parking and connecting the electricity, I took Evie for a swim in the pond. We had just come back when my phone rang. It was Oliva. "Hi, Oliva," I greeted her. "Damon, I hope your day is going smoothly," she said. "It's certainly been the most eventful day in a while," Oliva continued. "Thanks to you, we heard this afternoon that Dr. Ronald Foster has been suspended from practice until the state medical board completes their investigation." "I'm surprised they moved so fast," I said. "I thought they would at least conduct an interview first." "They only suspend someone when there's a serious complaint backed by partial evidence," Oliva explained. "This means they view it as urgent. We should have the outcome in about 3 months." "I included all the information in the divorce petition," I said. At 3 p.m., your soon-to-be ex-husband was served the summons during his shift. I had already notified security and asked them to inform me when he arrived. I personally escorted him to Emma's section. When he reached her, the server approached and asked, "Are you Emma Lee?" When she confirmed, he handed her the papers and said, "Congratulations, you've been served." Oliva's tone grew serious as she added, "When she opened the envelope, the first thing everyone noticed was a photo of Ronald with Evie." I felt a pang of dread. "Oh no." "She screamed and then fainted," Oliva finished. "Wow, my lawyer made sure she saw it first," I said with a chuckle. "That's on her." "Did the state get a copy of that picture?" Oliva asked. "Knowing my lawyer, probably," I said. "Then the state really had no choice. Dr. Ronald Foster was having an affair with a patient," Oliva said. "I never thought you could pull this off. We even have an office pool now on how long he'll lose his license." "My dad thinks his license is permanently gone, at least in our state," I said. "Emma and Ronald falsified medical records to make me look mentally abusive so she could get sole custody. If this can be proven, there could be criminal charges. It's a mess, and now everyone knows Emma let Evie witness this affair." Oliva added, "Rumors are flying here. Some staff members refuse to work with her. I'm rearranging the schedule because they say they can't trust her anymore." When she regained consciousness, I told her that the state had confirmed Dr. Ronald Foster was suspended, pending an investigation. When she left at 3:30, she was furious. "Wait until she finds out Evie and I left town this morning with my parents on my lawyer's advice. Due to the accusations made by Ronald and Emma, my lawyer decided it was best that I not be alone with Evie for now." It was a smart move since Emma had friends worldwide who could lend credibility to her story. "She may have already spread false claims," Oliva said. "Ultimately, the details in our reports had saved our organization from legal trouble multiple times. We promised to stay in touch and said goodbye." My parents looked at me in astonishment. It was like they finally realized what Emma and Dr. Foster had been attempting. "Mom, look in your notebook for the address of the nearest notary we can visit tomorrow morning," I said. "Why?" she asked. "The lawyer has prepared legal documents transferring my parental rights to you both until the divorce is settled or my name is cleared. We need to have them signed and notarized by 3 p.m. tomorrow," I said. "I won't let them take Evie from us no matter what." Tears welled up in my mom's eyes. Are you sure about this? Isn't this a bit extreme? Yes, Mom, I'm sure. Even the lawyer agrees it's the best move. We don't know what the falsified medical reports say, so until I'm proven not to be a danger to Evie, we need to do this for her safety, I explained. My mom started crying when we got home. Emma saw my car in the driveway, turned off her engine, and braced herself for the confrontation. She rang the doorbell, hoping I would answer. When no one did, she rang it again. Finally, she used her key to unlock the door. Once inside, she realized no one was home. Evie didn't come running to greet her. Emma pulled out an envelope full of legal documents and read through them. It was clear that whoever had been hired had uncovered everything. Ronald's and her own incriminating words laid out their plan. Damon had struck first, and he had struck hard. None of the altered medical records had been revealed yet, since their plan hadn't reached that stage. Now they never would. Ronald couldn't access his files until the investigation was over. Ronald never learned the specifics of the complaint against him, only that it was severe enough for precautionary measures. Damon's actions proved that this wasn't just about their mistakes. No decent person would accept that a 6-year-old had witnessed such behavior. Until now, Emma hadn't realized Evie might have woken up and seen them. Sole custody was no longer possible, though joint custody might be. The priority now was to reach Damon and talk. Damon always listened to her. She called him, but it went to voicemail. She texted him, but got no reply. She called his parents' home phone, but got no answer. Their cell phones went straight to voicemail, too. It was clear they had blocked her. Emma called her sister, who answered. Hi, Emma. Damon made the right call. Everyone in the family received a copy of his divorce petition, Evelyn said. Mom and Dad are furious. They've read it and are disgusted by what you and your lover did. To them, you've gone too far trying to ruin Damon's reputation. He called them right after you left for work to tell them he was taking their granddaughter to his parents' house. When they asked why, he said, Your daughter and her lover left me no choice. You'll receive documents explaining everything, Dad, Damon told them. Emma whispered, Does this mean I'll have to fight my own family for custody? Looks like it, Evelyn replied. The divorce court can't rule on something Damon no longer has. He outmaneuvered you. I told you he's the kindest and most compassionate man until he's crossed. Then he goes all out. You know your mother-in-law's reputation. This is going to be a long and grueling fight. I expected a fight, but not this, Emma admitted. I thought I had secured a winning hand. We all received the same certified copy of the divorce petition you did, Evelyn explained. A certified copy was also sent to the state medical board. You and Ronald were trying to ruin Damon to remove Evie from your lives. If you were in his place, what would you do? Damn, Emma muttered. He's targeting my boyfriend's career and our future. If the board sides with Damon, Ronald may never practice medicine in this state again. Exactly, sis. Damon's using your own tactics to prove your intentions, Evelyn said. But that's on you. You said Ronald was worth it. The family agrees. This is your problem now. None of us want any part in this mess or in ruining Damon's life. Stay away from us until this is resolved. Emma was shocked that Damon had outsmarted her so completely. Even her family was turning away from the chaos she had created. She spent the rest of the night wondering how she and Ronald had been caught, thinking they had been so careful. Meanwhile, Ronald Foster had just wrapped up a meeting with his partners. After 4 intense hours, they agreed to buy him out immediately to minimize the impact of the investigation on their practice. Until they knew more about the serious allegations, everyone would be in the dark. Ronald made enough from the buyout to start his own practice once things settled down. Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She opened it. It was Damon's reply to her earlier message. Can't talk. Too angry. All communication will go through lawyers or happen in their presence. Emma burst into tears, realizing she had lost any chance to convince Damon to withdraw the complaint against Ronald. My parents and I had just finished at the notary's office, finalizing the transfer of my parental rights to them. I paid an extra $5 to have a scanned copy sent to my lawyer when I received an unexpected call from my family doctor's office. The state representatives were there but hadn't included my name in the medical records specified in the court order. The nurse asked for my consent to release the records, which I gave, and I requested they also include billing records for both my wife and me. She assured me everything related to my family would be included. Mom had planned our trip meticulously, picking up little activities each day to keep Evie entertained. It brought back fond memories from my own childhood. We parked early, and since the humidity wasn't too high, I joined Dad in grilling dinner outside. Mom stepped out and said, Oliva is calling your phone. I took the phone from her. "Hi, Oliva," I said. "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "Thanks to you, it's been another interesting day," Oliva said with a light laugh. "Emma spent about an hour being interviewed by state representatives. They used our in-house notary to certify her testimony." "That's very interesting," I said. "Is there anything else I should know?" When the interview was over, she told me she would have to appear before the board of nursing for a formal review because of her actions, Oliva said. "It's likely she'll be placed on 6 months probation." "How will that impact her job?" I asked. "Since none of this happened here, not much," Oliva said. "But I'll have to keep a close eye on her and report any questionable behavior for 6 months. Emma will probably submit the most detailed patient reports in the organization. If she's put on probation, she'll be on the graveyard shift the whole time." I started laughing. Emma despised the graveyard shift because it ruined her social life. I explained that we were focused on making this time special for Evie. After chatting a bit more, I promised to take Oliva out to dinner when I returned. During dinner, Mom asked, "What do you know about Oliva?" "Not much," I said. "She's a single mom, around my age, with a son about a year older than Evie. I'm not even sure if she was ever married." Oliva and I stayed in touch while we were away. The day before we were set to return, I called my lawyer to ask for access to the house to gather my things. That's when I found out Emma had moved out, taking what she wanted, and now living with Ronald. We came back a couple of days early so I could handle some important tasks. On Friday morning, we packed up the van once more. When I explained the plan to my parents, they thought it was a bit much. Nonetheless, they dropped me off at the house early that morning and took Evie with them to our new home. The first thing I did was mow the lawn. Just as I finished, a neighbor walked over and handed me a cold beer. "All I can say is, that was a smart move. Your divorce made the local news," he said. After that, I called a locksmith to rekey all the locks and spent the afternoon cleaning up the mess Emma had left behind. Later, I called my mom to ask if she needed anything picked up from the house. She said, "No, just bring the rest of your and Evie's clothes." I decided to sell the house along with whatever was left. I loaded the remaining canned and frozen food and donated it to the food bank, then cleaned out the refrigerator. When I got back home, my mom insisted that I leave all my clothes in the laundry room to wash them before use, just in case. By 4 p.m., I picked up my phone, and Oliva answered on the first ring. "Hey, Damon, you're back?" she said. "Yes, I got back this morning," I replied. "I've been cleaning the house all day to get it ready for sale. Would you and your son like to join Evie and me for dinner, if he's home?" "We'd love to, but he's with my mom this weekend, so I'm free," Oliva said. "Great. I'll leave Evie with my mom and pick you up at 7. Outback or Red Lobster?" I asked. "Red Lobster sounds perfect," she replied. I dressed up a bit for dinner, wearing a shirt, pants, and leather shoes. Since I had reservations, we were seated right away. We had a great dinner, and I learned more about her. She had never been married, and was raising her 7-year-old son on her own. Her father had once been a firefighter. My first day back at work was set for Sunday. The state still hadn't made a decision regarding Emma and Ronald, and the general feeling was that the longer it dragged on, the worse it would be. I told Oliva about the activities we had done as a family with Evie over the past 3 weeks. After dinner, we took a walk around downtown Cape to enjoy the nightlife. I got back to my parents' house around 11 p.m., and Mom, being Mom, was still awake, waiting for me. On Sunday afternoon, I was called into work to meet a visitor. I guessed who it might be, and I was right. It was my ex, Emma Lee. "Mrs. Foster, how can I help you?" I said as I entered the office and turned on the recording app on my phone. "My name is still Lee, Damon," Emma said. "Well, if that's the case, then I'm still the piece of trash to you," I replied. "So, what do you want, Emma?" "That's not true," she said, trying to change the mood. "Sorry, but your actions say otherwise, don't they?" I replied. "You moved into another place the day after Evie and I left for vacation. Witnesses saw you move in the next day. So much for feeling guilty or remorseful." "I want to see Evie," Emma said. "Talk to your lawyer. He'll confirm that I legally don't have any say over that." "You're knocking on the wrong door," I replied. "After all, you publicly accused me of abusing our child." "I know that, but you can help smooth things over," Emma said. "I'm sorry, but I don't think Evie needs to be exposed to someone who is just a disgrace," I said. "The pictures speak for themselves. If you care for her, you can handle this through my parents. Now, please leave, Mrs. Foster, or I'll file for a restraining order." I turned away and left, signaling the on-duty staff to escort her out. I saved the recording. Later, the staff member told me her face went pale, and as he walked her to her car, she broke down. He added, "Most of us who helped Damon figure this out think your behavior is unforgivable. You tried to strip everything meaningful from him. Late Monday night, I was responding to a medical call with an ambulance crew when my mom called. I let it go to voicemail as we prepared an elderly patient for transport. Once I was back at the station, I called her back. "Sorry, Mom, I couldn't answer. I was on a call," I said. "I understand. I wanted to let you know that the state representatives came by right after I brought Evie home. They spoke to her at school and inspected the house and her room. I showed them the transfer of parental rights and assured them I've never seen you act violently," she said. "Thanks, Mom. That's reassuring," I replied. "I also hope you're okay with this. Emma's parents are here for dinner," she added. "Do you want us to wait for you?" "That's fine, Mom. Please tell them I said hi, and I'll be home as soon as I can. Let them know they're welcome to spend time with Evie any time, as long as Emma isn't around. That will be the rule until the court decides otherwise." I stayed late at work to cover for an evening shift worker who couldn't arrive until after 8 p.m. I assured him he could make it up to me later. I texted my mom to let her know not to wait up and explained why. As I got into my Ford Escape to head home, my phone rang. It was Emma's dad. "Hey, how was dinner?" I asked. "It was great. Both your mother-in-law and I enjoyed it," he replied. "Damon, we wanted to thank you. Gracie told us what you said. We're truly sorry for what our daughter did. We promise to respect your conditions." "Have you spoken to her at all?" I asked. "No, we haven't talked since we got the divorce petition. She showed up at the station on Sunday, demanding to see Evie. I told her it wasn't my decision and that she needed to speak with your mom," he explained. "Wait a second. I just remembered. I recorded that conversation. Would you like me to send it to you?" I offered. "Please do. I'd appreciate hearing it," he said. I sent him the recording, and he must have liked it because he forwarded it to my parents and all his kids, including Emma. He texted back saying the recording clarified everything. It was fortunate I lived in this region because the next day, I learned that Emma and I had an appointment with Judge Donald McDonald on Friday at 1 p.m. He was known as one of the toughest and most principled judges in the area. You could be as difficult as you wanted in his courtroom, but he would respond in kind. It was rumored that if you crossed him, you might never recover. People often compared him to Judge Roy Bean, but tougher. My lawyer said, "This case will feel like a Friday the 13th movie. Watch your language and be prepared to answer questions directly when asked or face the consequences. The judge won't tolerate baseless claims or speculation, only facts. That's how we'll defend ourselves." We gathered in the courtroom as Judge McDonald took his seat. Emma's attorney was pushing for visitation rights for Evie and aimed to overturn the transfer of my parental rights. My lawyer explained that I had willingly transferred my parental rights to my parents due to the allegations from my wife and her lover. I had prioritized Evie's needs over my own and hadn't been alone with her since learning about the accusations. We played the recorded conversation in court, and I reiterated that Emma would have to take up visitation rights with those who now held parental responsibility, my parents. The judge requested to hear the recording, so my attorney played it through the courtroom's sound system. Everyone could hear it clearly, and Emma's discomfort was obvious. My lawyer also submitted a notarized statement from a witness corroborating the story. Afterward, the judge reviewed the parental rights transfer document, and a slight smile appeared as he read it. He turned to Emma's lawyer. "Is it true that Mr. Lee transferred his parental rights due to accusations of mental cruelty made by his ex-wife?" the judge asked. "Yes, but she was under immense emotional pressure at the time. She has since stabilized," Emma's attorney replied. "Is the case being investigated as explained?" the judge asked. "Yes, it's under investigation, but no conclusion has been reached yet," Emma's lawyer responded. "I'll read what the termination of parental rights document states," the judge said. "I voluntarily relinquish my parental rights until state agencies investigating my parenting skills reach a conclusion or until the court has evidence that I am not abusive." "There are currently 2 agencies investigating, correct?" the judge asked. "There are actually 3, the State Medical Board, Child Services, and the State Board of Nursing," my lawyer clarified. "Interesting. This is quite a tangled situation. How long have these investigations been ongoing?" Judge McDonald asked. "About a month," my lawyer answered. "Given the length of the investigations, this is clearly more than just a he said, she said issue, correct?" the judge asked. Referring to page 32 of the divorce petition, my lawyer pointed out why the investigations were still active. The judge pulled out the petition and read it, his expression turning serious. He put the papers down and looked at Emma's lawyer. A divorce will not be granted until all 3 investigations are completed. I cannot interfere with an inquiry that may result in criminal charges. It seems one party here might be facing criminal consequences due to the actions of the other party. I must consider this possibility, as the complaints could be false," Judge McDonald stated. "The termination of Mr. Damon Lee's parental rights stands. I commend him for prioritizing his child's well-being. It takes a strong parent to step aside for the protection of a child and oneself. The court acknowledges that his decision was made in light of serious allegations, and he acted responsibly. Until the state agencies present their findings, no final decisions will be made. Mrs. Emma Lee must pursue her suit for visitation through the other legal guardians, which he is not. Court is adjourned," the judge concluded. The look on Emma's face said it all. She was furious that what I had done was considered legal. She hated losing. As we exited the courtroom, she came over to me. "Damon, how did you figure it out?" Emma asked. "It was a series of small things that didn't add up after Evie's accident and the barbecue at Oliva's. Remember that phone call I got that Sunday?" I replied. "Yes, why?" she asked. "Not long after that, I noticed your behavior mirrored how you acted in high school when you were interested in someone else," I said. "That call was a response to a text I sent a few minutes earlier. By the time the call ended, you were already being investigated." Her face went pale. She hadn't realized she'd given herself away and had assumed someone had tipped me off. "Follow the small clues, and eventually the whole story unfolds," I said with a smile. "Given how detail-oriented you are with your patients, you should have known that." I didn't have to say it, but I relished solving it. My grin only made her angrier as I walked out. I stepped into the men's room and ran into the judge. I thanked him for his decision. "It was my pleasure," Judge McDonald said. "After reading the facts, it was clear. Just one question. Was it your lawyer's idea for you to do this?" "No, it was mine," I said. "I knew my wife well enough to realize she'd do or say anything to worsen my situation. I saw I was cornered in a way she could control. A friend mentioned that her profession gave her access to influential people who could sway things. This was my only way to remove myself from that situation. If you hadn't acted, she would have secured not only visitation, but custody due to the seriousness of the accusations," the judge said. "Your move put an end to all of it. I hope your name is cleared soon." "So do I replied. On Saturday night, there was a 60s-themed dance at the fairgrounds. I had a couple of tickets and called Oliva to ask if she wanted to go. She said she'd love to, but was having dinner with her parents first. "Would you and Evie like to come?" she asked. I said yes. It had been a while since I'd seen my overprotective dad in action. Evie and Oliva's son Terry got along great. Oliva's dad seemed a bit difficult, and she must have noticed because I overheard her telling him to back off. "Dad, Damon is a good, honest man," Oliva said. "How would you know what kind of man he is?" he retorted. "His ex-wife accused him of terrible things that everyone talks about." "Dad," Oliva said, "he works at the number 3 precinct." Her dad paused, then broke into a smile. "Oh, well, why didn't you tell me that?" He shook my hand, adding, "It takes a certain kind of person to be a firefighter. Now I know those rumors are garbage. You're always welcome here." They offered to keep Evie overnight, but I explained she needed to be with a relative for the weekend and told them why. The dance was great. There's nothing like dancing to oldies like Twist and Shout, songs by the Beach Boys, and early rock and roll. Oliva loved doo-wop songs because her mom had played them when she was little. I walked Oliva to her door, and as we said goodnight, she leaned in and kissed me. "Damon, I know it's early, but I was wondering when you'd be ready," she said, before saying goodbye. I got home around 2 in the morning, and my mom was, as usual, waiting up for me. We talked about the night and how much fun I had. Before heading to bed, I knew the lawyers were dividing the property and putting the house on the market. The process had been slow, but after 3 months, there was progress. The state medical board found Dr. Ronald Foster guilty of multiple ethics violations, with altering medical records for personal gain being the most serious. His actions to ruin my life and take my wife were met with severe consequences. His medical license was permanently revoked. Oliva called me when she heard the news, waking me from sleep. I went back to bed for a couple more hours, but I was too excited to rest. My mom was thrilled when I shared the news with her and my dad. Seeing me dressed, my mom asked what was going on. "I'm going to see if the lady who's been by my side these past few months wants to go out for lunch," I said. Mom smiled. "It's about time we met Oliva." At noon, I walked into the Chateau nursing home in Cape, dressed semi-formally. The first person I saw was the receptionist who had lied to me months ago. Her face turned pale as I approached the counter. "Could you please let Oliva Jones know that a gentleman is here to ask if she'd like to join him for lunch?" I said. I watched as the receptionist picked up the phone and called Oliva. A few minutes later, Oliva appeared with a big smile. After greeting her, I pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Hand in hand, we walked outside and headed to Logan's Roadhouse for lunch. "You know we're the main topic for all the gossipers now," Oliva said. "Emma already heard about it from the queen of gossip, the receptionist," I replied. "That's her issue. Now that I've been vindicated, I'm moving forward. Besides, my new girlfriend is probably tired of waiting for me to step up." I must have said the right thing, because Oliva's eyes welled up a bit, and her 1-hour lunch break turned into 2.5 hours. Later, I found out that after I dropped Oliva back at work, the receptionist told Emma how happy and in love we looked. Emma was about to discover that her world was unraveling. The local CBS station reported at 4 p.m. that Dr. Ronald Foster and Emma Lee had plotted to ruin me by falsifying medical records. That same week, the Board of Nursing placed Emma on a 1-year probation. Oliva transferred Emma to the graveyard shift, as was fitting. Emma and Ronald's relationship started to fall apart, especially after she found out she was pregnant. Ronald began to search for other opportunities, but soon realized he had none. He took a job as an orderly at the Lutheran Home for Veterans, working the night shift. On the last night of my 4-day shift rotation, I arrived at the station to find a congratulatory banner hanging. They called someone in to cover for me. Oliva, her son, her parents, our captain, my parents, and my daughter were all there. I had just been promoted. The promotion had been delayed due to what I'd been through. It meant no more night shifts for me. I was now in a junior manager position with a 5-day, 8-hour work schedule and weekends off. During the party, I overheard Bill Jones telling the captain that if everything went well, he'd soon be my father-in-law. About 2 weeks later, we were back in Judge McDonald's office. The settlement agreement terms were finalized, and I was granted a divorce on the grounds of infidelity. One night, Ronald Foster disappeared, leaving Emma alone and pregnant. On Labor Day weekend, I took Oliva for a walk in one of the local state parks just before sunset. I had one important thing to do, which meant getting down on one knee. She said yes, of course. Our families came together for a barbecue at Oliva's house on Monday afternoon. I had just finished grilling the Franks when Oliva's mother, Odessa, noticed the engagement ring and rushed over to hug me. "When were you going to tell me?" Odessa asked her daughter. "After we finished eating," Oliva said with a big grin. Bill saw his wife's reaction and called out, "What's going on?" Everyone turned their attention to him. "Nothing's wrong. Oliva and Damon are engaged and getting married," Odessa said. "We were married the week before Halloween. Emma is now allowed to see Evie when she's with her parents, but no one knows that my parents and I have legally regained full parental rights. Emma now has to live with the fact that one of her supervisors is her ex-husband's new wife. She's not a happy person. After all that had transpired, life seemed to finally settle into a new normal. I stood on the back porch, watching Evie chase Terry around the yard, their laughter a testament to the resilience children have in the face of change. The sun cast its golden glow across the yard, illuminating the promise of a future that felt lighter, more secure. Oliva stepped out, a warm smile crossing her face as she slipped her arm around my waist. We stood together in silence, soaking in the simple joy that had been so hard-won. I turned to her, grateful for the strength she'd shown and the quiet understanding that had helped rebuild the trust I'd thought lost forever. "We made it, didn't we?" she whispered. I nodded, a deep breath filling my lungs. "Yeah, we did. And it's just the beginning." The past year had been marked by chaos and betrayal, but it had also proven that when life shattered, it could be rebuilt, stronger, steadier, and wiser. We had learned, together, that family wasn't just what you were born into. It was what you fought for, what you protected, and what you chose day after day. With Evie now running toward me, I scooped her up, her little arms wrapping tightly around my neck. The sound of a camera shutter clicked as Oliva captured the moment. The future, uncertain as ever, felt like a canvas we were now free to paint together, one day at a time. As the sky turned hues of orange and purple, I knew that the past would always echo in our story, but it would no longer define it. We were ready for whatever came next, as a family, stronger than before, and unbreakable in the bonds we had chosen to forge.